Hey guys, my name is Partha Srinivasan and I am the host for the East Podcast. Welcome to yet another episode. On the East Podcast, we talk about technology and try to bring it closer to your senses. We know that technology is in today's world; it affects everybody's lives, and we try to delve into it and try and figure out what makes it tick, where it comes from, where it is, and where it's going. On the podcast, we bring in subject matter experts for different types of technologies, whether it's servers, data centers, mobile apps, enterprise technologies, or even consumer technologies. So we do stuff like 3D printing, robotics, artificial intelligence, and these I call consumer technologies because these affect the consumer on a regular basis. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about in today's podcast is preventive medicine, and I have with me a friend of mine and a guest, Dr. Wasim Mohideen, who's based in Chennai. Thank you very much for joining us on our show, Wasim.
Thanks, Partha.
So, Wasim, if you could just kind of introduce yourself, talk about your journey as to how, where you started in medicine, and how you reached the stage of actually understanding and working in preventive medicine.
Okay, that's a long story, but I'll try and keep it as concise as possible.
Thank you.
Or rather, it's a zigzag story. I started out with medicine, and
Okay.
after my BBS, when most people are clear about what path they want to take and which direction they want to specialize in, I wanted to specialize in all of them, and that is a problem. So I took a break from medicine. I went and did an MBA. 2 years of MBA. I went to the US, did some work in clinical practice management, and there I saw some aspects of preventive medicine and also Indian streams of medicine being practiced, but in a very unorthodox way. There were times when I was wondering why is this being done here when it's not being done as much as it should be done in India. So I came back to India, spent the next few years trying to understand alternative medicines. But at the same time, I also went back into full time medicine, got my post graduation in family medicine. And that's how the journey started. So after doing family medicine, which kind of gets you an insight into all kinds of specialties, I spent 5 years in training in both acupuncture and Ayurveda. So I guess I have a reasonable insight on uh, both streams of medicine, both the modern stream and the alternative stream, and I've ended up combining them to preventive medicine. Outside of this, I also went to MIT in Boston for my entrepreneurship course, and that sort of, I think, gave me some idea on how to move this forward, including technology. So, till then, it was just my practice, but it was after the MIT that the technology aspect came inside.
So, tell us a little bit about how, like you said, that you kind of saw this unorthodox methodology of medicine being practiced. Could you give us a little bit of an insight as to what what do you perceive as unorthodox and compare it to what we are used to? So, give us a little perspective there, please.
Okay, so I think the choice of words were wrong. I wouldn't call it unorthodox. It was unorthodox in the environment that I was in. I was at in the US and in the mecca of modern medicine. When someone told me, "Hey, you know, I like your yoga, and we are now using turmeric to, we believe it's going to boost immunity." I was like, "Hey, what's wrong with you guys? You're the seat of modern medicine. You're talking about some ancient stream of medicine." And so, uh, a doctor that I was kind of working with, she was like, "Yeah, I mean, aren't you supposed to be knowing better than that?" I was like, "Hey, I am a modern doctor. I am an allopath. Don't tell me about some anecdotal history." And then she was like, "If you don't know about it, then don't judge. Have you experienced it?" I said, "No." And I think that kind of lowered my guard about alternative medicine. And I tried to understand what it was going to do. And then I realized that there is a world out there. Well, it may not be a magic pill. There is certainly something that we can all learn from there. Simple things like the role of exercise and diet. Even though modern medicine talks about it extensively today, when I was in medicine in 2000, when I was just getting into medicine, it wasn't such a big deal. It was always drugs, drugs, drugs. But slowly, I think modern medicine is taking, as more research shows, they're taking elements of alternative medicine, proving it in the modern medicine's methodology, and then accepting them. So, like I said, there is no magic cure, there's no magic pill, but there is there are a lot of things that we can learn from there, from alternative streams.
So is this something that's actually picking up a little more actively of late, or has it been a trend or something that's been happening for a couple of decades now? Because you said that you kind of been exposed to this only recently.
So I was in the US in 2007, first time when I got exposed to this, to or rather got exposed to the wonders of alternative medicine in a completely unexpected place. So it's been around for a while, but like everything else, I think it starts off with being very niche and slowly trickles down. And I think today we are well aware that people do understand that, yes, modern medicine is great for cure. If you have a heart attack, your best chance of survival is if you go to a hospital. That's your best chance of survival. But clearly, it doesn't seem to have too much to do with prevention, and whatever it is doing, things like eat well. You talk about, take any area, and they like, it comes down to eat well, exercise, lifestyle. What to eat, what exercise, what lifestyle. It's all very open. So it's been around for a while. It's catching up a lot more now. So that's where it is.
All right. In terms of the technology that's being used, you mentioned the use of technology. So, give us a little insight as to, again, what is the kind of technology that we are seeing now? Where did it come from, and how is it looking to evolve over the next couple of years or the next couple of decades?
So I think someone very early on picked up that, let's try and use data. So probably one of the earliest, or I would say earliest, something that's been around for a while now, is the use of data from things like your phone and your watch to say that you walked so much. This is the calories you burned. And earlier, somebody had to calculate your BMR and tell you that, okay, so this is what you can do. But now all that is becoming automated. I think if you now enter your basic biological data, a simple app can tell you what kind of, what is your basal metabolic rate, which is simply the amount of calories that you would burn if you don't do anything in your day-to-day life. You just go do your daily job and come back. What is your BMR? And then it adds things like, okay, if you're a heavy exerciser, if you're someone who walks a lot during work, all those multiple, what do you call, customizations can happen, and then it can arrive at some kind of a number, and it gives you an idea on how much calories you burn. And this is one of the simplest examples of technology being used. And then you say that, okay, I've been walking for so long, I've been sleeping for so long, I've been eating all of this, and the system can start calculating how much you've burned. See, it's not very, very accurate, but it's a start. So this is probably one of the common technologies that's being used, but this is at one end of the spectrum. And there are areas at the other end of the spectrum where technology is moving towards, uh, in fact, asking you leading questions to even be able to give you prescriptions on drugs. So that's the other end that's still evolving, but this is the simplest example that I can think of.
So obviously, it factors in a lot of what's happening in your family, history. All of those things also matter. So obviously, the more data you feed into a system, the more accurate it would be. Am I correct?
So that's something that we're still getting there, because as we find out that, I don't know how it works in other areas, but in healthcare, just purely data may not be enough. There is something called as a data bias. So one of the simplest examples is when when somebody fed in the images of the eye, the retina, yeah, and they
Hmm.
just ran hundred thousand data inside, got the AI system to learn it completely, and then when they took it to Africa, where uh, there was a lack of eye doctors to screen diabetic retinopathy and other things, the system just couldn't figure it out, because the color of the African eye retina was a little different, and completely threw the system off. So data is important, yes, but I think we also realize today that there's a lot of data bias, and one set of data from a certain population may not always be used for a different population. So more data. is important, but data bias is also something that needs to be kept in mind. So it's not just pump in as much data and everything will be all right, because it's artificial intelligence. It's we still have to learn it properly.
Okay. So coming to the question about the collection of data itself, I mean, and also the fact that it leads to a whole range of different people who are needed. So a lot of specialties are involved as well. So what is the scope of like preventive medicine right now? I mean, right from diagnosis to something that's curative, like you do preventive medicine to build into like a curative sort of system into the healthcare, into the person as well, right?
So when you say preventive, it's an extremely wide term. But being very
Mm-hmm.
specific in medicine, we talk about three levels of prevention, and recently there's also a fourth level: the primary, secondary, tertiary, and also the quaternary prevention. So primary prevention is basically something that you do to prevent or delay the onset of a disease, diabetes, for example. If you do something and if you're able to delay diabetes by 10 years or 5 years, then that's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Secondary prevention is when you've got diabetes. But how do you prevent a heart attack? Now, that's also prevention. You may not have prevented diabetes, but secondary prevention is when you try and prevent the complications of, of an existing disease. And that's important. And tertiary prevention is when okay, you have a heart attack, then you need to prevent or delay disability to as much as possible. But also today there's a rather important level of prevention called the quaternary prevention. And it's kind of an oxymoron because quaternary prevention is preventing overdiagnosis. It is to stop labeling somebody unnecessarily a diabetic, unnecessarily an hypertensive. So that one, you're preventing the drug abuse, you're preventing uh, medical expenses. So that's also a type of prevention. So I know when we say prevention, we normally talk about just prevention, but prevention is actually, like I said, a very wide topic,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a role, or there can be a role for technology in all these levels of prevention, and they're going to be extremely different. Uh, the, the 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 kind of things that you need to do for a primary prevention is very different from what you would do for a secondary prevention.
Very interesting. So I had also asked about the levels of specialties that are involved in kind of building into preventive medicine. So if you could kind of shed some light on that.
Okay, so like I said, since there are many levels of prevention, and if you're going to primary prevention, I think one of the first things is to remove the specialties. You cannot have preventing an infection in the right ear. It doesn't work that way. The other problem is when too many specialties are involved. Yeah, and I've seen this a lot when a 35, 36 year old overweight or obese person is told, hey, you're just going to bad is going to happen to you in 5 years. Start running and reduce your weight. And you know what? He reduces his weight, and 5 years down the line, he has a bad knee, he has arthritis, and so much of weight he pounded on his knees that you prevented or delayed diabetes, and you put the same guy into significant distress because of his knee pain. So I think one of the things that we'll have to remove specialties and start looking at a person as a whole in primary prevention, and that I think is where roles of family physicians and preventive physicians come in. Is to liaise, yes, with multiple specialties, but to completely remove the concept of a specialty and look at a person as a whole and see what is best for him. It's okay if you delay diabetes by 6 years instead of 10, uh, but you're not putting him. It's like almost like a balloon, no? You press one end and the other end pops up. We don't want that.
Correct.
So
So you're saying that a generalist approach and a more careful approach is more prudent in this case.
yes, absolutely.
All right. Uh, Now there's also the use of technology, and this is something that I believe you'll have probably been exposed to a lot. Is people who go online and visit WebMD and stuff, and they kind of self-diagnose themselves. And obviously, then there are the hypochondriacs who are just like a next level of uh, how do I put this? Self. I don't know, they put themselves into a situation where they're not so sure about what to do next. So how do you kind of counter that, and how does preventive medicine help these people? I mean, they come in probably thinking, oh my god, I am potentially going to die in the next 3 to 6 months. But then guess what, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but they've built it up in their head. So how do you kind of counter that?
So when you say that people go to WebMD and everywhere, so we are dealing with a kind of an information overload. It's like trying to drink off a fire hose. You're standing in front of a blast of air. Despite all of that, you can't breathe. It's going to overwhelm you. So one of the things that I figured out about 10 years ago was that the only way to do it is to bring in a certain amount of objectivity and also to be able to spend time. And I think these are the two pillars in preventive medicine. When you're dealing with preventive medicine, and also to start focusing on certain areas. If you just generally go and say preventive medicine, it's too much again from a doctor's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even from a medical perspective, it's important to be objective in certain ways that can be explained. If you're if you have a reasonable amount of knowledge and you're able to explain why you agree or disagree with something that the patient says, and I've seen over a period of time that they're more than happy to listen.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think these two three pillars are important. One is being objective. Second one is being able to spend the time backed up by a certain amount of knowledge for the doctor. And third one is to be specific with areas of prevention.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how I think I've ended up dealing with.
Awesome. So let's address the actual technology aspect of things. I mean, in terms of how machines or how data is being collected, as well as obviously the software routines that are happening in the back end. I mean, we have long gone are those portable bone density scanners and all of those things. Now you have far more advanced equipment. So where is technology actually taking this preventive medicine, and how is it helping?
So currently, I think technology is all piecemeal. You have something which can figure out one lead of an ECG with a watch. It's not complete, but it can give you one lead. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have these super smart CT scan machines which can look up multiple layers of data and pick out small things that most doctors may not be able to figure out. Yeah. So that's one end of the technology. The other end also, I think if uh, in China, there was a robot which actually passed the medical exam.
I'm sorry, do you want to repeat that? There's a robot that passed the medical exam.
Yes, it was actually given a medical license.
Wow. Okay.
And this is true. But you know where the problem is that sometimes in different parts of medicine, especially in preventive medicine, accuracy of diagnosis and and variability in diagnosis is sometimes more important than being extremely accurate. And in countries like the UK, they always talk about, okay, so what happens if I diagnose this? Am I going to make somebody's life better? Right? So if you are able to pick up a cancer 10 years prior to when it actually happens, or if it's there, then maybe you will make somebody's life better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always the case. There are times that people will just die of something else. And then in earlier days, I think people died of something else, and incidentally during postmortem, they used to find something else. So it's a balance between, and that's where, like I told you in the beginning, the quaternary prevention comes into play. Do you want to overdiagnose?
Right.
And that's something that technology is something that it has to thread a very thin line, because yes, you can have all the machines in the world and plug in all the data, and it's probably going to tell me that I have a 2.5% chance of dying of liver cancer. So what? Is it, are you going to take off my entire liver and then leave the rest of my life in misery, or do you want to take the chance that it's a small percentage? So it's going to be a thin line. It's something that's always going to be debated. Ethical things are going to come into place as to whether you're going to be able to make a difference or should you intervene. There are times in medicine this happens, and one of my professors of surgery used to tell me that There are times when the greatest thing that a good doctor can do is masterly inactivity. Just let it be. So, so there are times that it's important not to. Your common cold is a very very simple example. There are times that you just don't want to deal with it, and there will be patients who ask you for antihistamine. Like I can't keep sneezing, but the best thing is to just let it go, and it will go away in 7 days. But you can keep,
Right.
investigating, and if you keep investigating, you're going to find something. There's a small anecdote. I don't know if you have time to listen to that, but I think
Oh, go ahead.
no, I think it's somewhere. I'm not sure if it's in the Cleveland Clinic or Mayo Clinic, uh, where it's a little story. I think of a guy who goes in and to to the doctor and asks, saying that his glasses are loose. So he says, I think I need a screw to tighten my glasses. And the optometrist there, I think, says, hey, when did you last change your glasses? He says, I don't know, it's been 10 years, but I'm fine. He said, oh, no, no, you have to get your eye checked every year. And he says, okay, go ahead, get your eye checked. And then he looks at the eye and says, hey, there seems to be some changes in your eye. You should meet the doctor and get this tested. So he goes there, and somebody says, "Oh, this is could be there are small eye changes in your retina. This happens when you have diabetes, so you should go and check for diabetes." And he goes to the doctor. The doctor examines him, and then he asks, "Do you have any problems?" He says, "Yeah, I sometimes find it slightly difficult to swallow." He says, "Oh my God, let's get an endoscopy now." And then he gets an endoscope pumped into his throat, and I think one leads to another, and finally, he figures out that there is a small chance that he might have throat cancer. He's like, wow, I'm just not able to swallow slightly. And this is what it is. So he has an endoscopy done, then somebody does a colonoscopy on him, and then at the end of it, uh, he comes out of the hospital and says, my God, I know I just want to get back to life. I'm done. And then he finds out that the difficulty in swallowing was because his shirt collar was too tight. This guy comes out of the hospital and asks, where is my screw for my glasses? So I know it's a very extreme example, but something that I think most of us have thought in maybe colleges that while it is an extreme example, but something that we need to be careful about is you don't want to sit and diagnose everything that happens because the human body is so dynamic, and despite all of it, you just sometimes you just the best thing is not to do anything. But like I said, it's an extreme example. That's not the norm.
Fair enough. What has been the adoption of preventive medicine? How has it been in India? I mean, if you look at India, it's primarily split between the allopaths and the homeopaths in a big way, right? So, bringing something like preventive medicine that makes people more aware of, uh, being able to take care of themselves, and in a country where we are so fond of eating stuff that's generally not healthy for us. So, how has that been picked up?
Okay, I think we can look at if you if you look at a little bit of history of how this evolved, we may be able to understand why we are where we are. So I think in India, for the masses, preventive health checkup means going and getting a master health checkup every year or every 2 years. While it's not a bad approach, it's sometimes depending on the patients, it varies between complete inadequacy and complete unnecessary tests. That's the spectrum. But a lot of people think that if I get a master checkup, I'm going to find out everything. If that's not true, uh, it can pick up certain kinds of diseases. It can probably pick up some things like uh, you know uh, early stage diabetes. You can pick up hypertension. So there is a role for master checkup. If you look at the alternative streams, like I don't know anything about homeopathy, but if you look at ancient Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, It talks about things that you do on a regular basis to stay healthy. So the approach is very different. If you look at the textbooks of modern medicine, uh, I don't know if anything's changed very recently, but it has always been about what is the problem, what is my solution. That's the approach.
Right.
Whereas if you look at Ayurveda, if you look at take Ashtanga, one of the textbooks of Ayurveda, it has 3 volumes. The first volume I think has about 25 chapters. About 18 or 19 chapters is on prevention. And it's not about getting tested, but it's about what you do on a daily basis, what these foods do to your body, what these vegetables do to your body, what you do on a weekly basis, what you do on a seasonal basis, what you do annually to stay healthy. So, as a medicine, as a stream of medicine itself, it evolved around preventive health. And there is a story, I don't know how far it's true, that in ancient China, doctors were paid a retainer to keep a certain population under their control healthy. And if somebody fell sick, they actually lost. It was the other way around. They lost money when someone fell sick.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, so this is apparently in ancient China. So, and in India, it was always about the Ayurvedic doctor. Like I said, the Ashtanga Hridayam's 18 chapters out of 25 or 19 out of 25 in the first volume is dedicated to prevention. So the approaches of both these streams are very different, and I think there is a role for a role for both practices, because in modern medicine, one of the this is what something that I have faced is that people will come and get a master checkup. On one side, they would pick up early stage diabetes, which they would not have otherwise found out, which is great, right? So you can
Mm-hmm.
actually intervene and do something. But also, I've seen that there is a situation where most of us are in a state of discomfort. We go to the doctor when we fall sick. The doctor treats us and puts us back into the state of discomfort.
Right.
The journey that they're looking for at times is how do I go from this discomfort to wellness? So when I say discomfort, it could be something like I'm not able to sleep well. And you go and do all your master check. You don't have diabetes, you don't have hypertension, you don't have fine. Most places your solution would be go and cut your stress, go and do some exercise. It's not objective. So that there are similar ways. Like someone who's smoking and says, I want to give up smoking, lets me do tests are normal. Someone like, wait, I smoked for 10 years and everything is normal. Why the hell should I give it up? So I've had that end of the spectrum too. So it's so
Right.
sometimes because uh, you know you'll get only the answers if you ask the right questions. If you're going to take blood count, blood sugar, liver function test for 100 people, and if you're not asking the right questions, if you're asking getting the same test for everybody, you're not going to get the right answers. So for a particular smoker who's been smoking so long, there are certain tests that you will need to get to see if it is affecting you. It may not affect your blood sugars. It may not affect your liver function test. May not. May or may not. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think asking the right question, even with regards to tests, is very important. At the same time, what solutions can you offer? If somebody wants is not able to sleep, is not able to have a satisfied sexual health or a sexual life, for example, his their normal way of approach would be to come and get a health check and see if something's wrong, get a testosterone done and see if something's wrong, and then be like everything is normal. Why am I not able to uh, have a satisfied sex life? Why am I not able to sleep so much? I'm exercising and dieting. I don't eat it all. Why am I not losing weight?
Right.
So I think in a modern medicine's approach, if you decide to take that approach, it's important to start also looking at specifics. As preventive doctors, I think we should also, I know I keep saying that we shouldn't be specializing, but we need to be able to address this discomfort issues. When the tests are normal, there's nothing wrong with them, but they are in discomfort and it could be anything. I'm just taking the example of sleep and sexual health and weight loss, which is because it's the more common.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but those discomfort areas when tests are not able to diagnose, and that I think is an important area for preventive medicine, where in future I believe technology will also be able to help in delivering this.
Awesome. Awesome. So what is the expectation now? I mean, going forward over the next few years, like how do you think the approach to preventive, or are there any kind of obstacles that a person who wants to get into preventive medicine, or for example, even if a person wants to explore preventive medicine as something, as a a long term solution for their healthcare, what are the kind of obstacles that are coming in their way right now, and what are the steps being taken to overcome them?
So I think for now, to start off with, people don't come for preventive medicine. At least most of my patients, especially the ones who come from word of mouth, they come because they have some of that discomfort. They want to feel better.
It's more secondary than primary,
No, no, it is
is what you're
primary.
saying.
It is primary, but because they don't have a disease yet, they don't have diabetes yet.
Got it.
So they would either come for a master health check, or rather extended master health check, where instead of getting the run of the mill test for everybody, they would come, they would talk, we would have a baseline test, and then we would say, depending on their lifestyle, what else to add and how to kind of fine tune to best suit them. There is no 100% solution in this. Uh, how to best suit for them, and then how to interpret those tests with respect to the discomfort that they have.
Got it.
Yeah. So the obstacle, I think, is that there is no preventive medicine as a screening tool today. Maybe down the line in the future we might have, but everybody at the age of 30 or 35 has to go through something to look at risks, or maybe get their genetics tested to understand their risks maybe in the future. But today I think it is still problem oriented. And when I say problem oriented, it could be uh, because of that discomfort, or because of a certain kind of fear. You know, for me, my patients, the minute their son or daughter picks up a pencil and puts it in their mouth and start blowing, people would come running and saying, "This happened yesterday at home. Please help me quit smoking." Or uh, somebody in their 50s, near far relative, somebody passes away with a heart attack. Like, he was only 15 and he had a heart attack. I want to get tested. And that's the fear is something that brings them. But from a proactive way, it is still very niche. People who are used to this preventive medicine, who are used to techniques of preventive medicine, then they do it very, very frequently. Like, people you have people who take retreats, people who do kind of detoxes, people who kind of do multiple things that they think is best suited for them.
Right.
That still happens. But from an obstacle perspective, I think
It's more of
just that there is
mindset.
no preventive. Yeah, it's more a mindset. It's something that you get pulled into. But once you're into it, I think there's a lot more connected. I think so. It's that they don't drop out as much because they
Okay.
see that it feels nice, and that they're able, like I said, they're able to sleep better. They're able to see objective change.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Thank you very much again for all this information. It's very, very useful. In case somebody, I mean, when somebody hears this and if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
An email thing is the best.
Email.
I'll be able to reply. Yeah, at leisure.
Okay.
If you want to ask questions,
Okay. Yes. Like if they want to
yeah,
reach
yeah,
out to you, like if they want to connect with you.
yeah, yeah. You can give them my mail ID. I can connect, and if they need to see me, then we can always find ways to do it.
All right. So, any information, if you need me to connect you, the listener, to Dr. Wasim, feel free to reach out to us as each podcast, and we are happy to connect you to him uh, in the various different ways that we are connected to him. Uh, Thank you very much for joining us, Wasim. I really appreciate the time and effort and being so clear about the information you're sharing with us. It does put a lot of that brings a lot of clarity into what preventive medicine is and how helpful it could be, and I hope it really helps the users out there.
Thanks, brother. Thanks a lot. It was fun.
All right. Thank you very much, people, for tuning in to this episode of East Podcast. My name is Partha Srinivasan, and if you want to reach out to us, feel free to visit the website. That's eastpodcast.in. We are available on all the different podcast playing apps, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're everywhere. Uh, Thank you very much for tuning in. For any information or any suggestions, use our website. There's a contact form over there, or you could just reach out to me. There's an email address on the East Podcast website as well, and we will answer your questions as quickly as possible. Thank you very much once again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Cheers.